Welcome to all of you to join us in this webinar where this is first of a kind for us. So we'll just be talking from the heart about what this is all about and trying to give you a sense for why we're doing this and what our initial direction is. First, just a little bit about us. I personally, born in Gary, Indiana. Our parents were proud Lebanese who, had a very loving environment, who lived their life working hard to give their children a better life. Feel very fortunate to the environment that I was raised in. Took an interest in engineering, got a chemical engineering degree, and once I started working, found out that maybe that career wasn't as fulfilling as I had hoped, and found my way to medical technology back in 1979. I joined Baxter, and I spent 20 years there, and I really grew up and got a chance to have a vast group of experiences, with the last of which included being able to run the cardiovascular business. And Baxter decided to exit that and to spin it out, and that became an independent company called Edwards Life Sciences, and I had the pleasure of leading that as chairman and CEO for over 20 years. And it's where I really got an education on cardiovascular medicine. And I also had a chance to build a lot of wonderful relationships with people around the country and around the world. Linda and I have really taken on this idea of doing something about congenital heart disease. It's really important to us. Linda's been a huge supporter. I could never do the kind of things that I've done if it wasn't for her support. And we're going to be celebrating our 50th anniversary next year, actually. But just to jump into it, and Orin, let's go to the first slide. What is congenital heart disease? We're going to use this term MCA, which is an acronym for the Mussallem CHD Alliance. But what is CHD? Let's go to the first slide. What it means is congenital is something that you're born with, and it's a heart defect that you're born with. And so what does that even mean? Well, there's a great variety of heart defects, even though they can be somewhat categorized into different sort of groups. It's a vast landscape. It could be things like a hole in a portion of your heart that needs to be plugged, or a chamber or a vessel that's not open, that's closed and needs to be open, or it could be a whole missing pumping chamber, one of your ventricles. The more that we learn about this, the more that I learn that each child is unique and has its own defect, and it's what makes this somewhat challenging because there's not a one-size-fits-all for addressing these heart defects. And what do we do with heart defects? Well, it normally means open heart surgery. So actually opening the chest, and the best thinking is do this at birth, opening the chest, stopping the heart, pumping the blood through a heart-lung machine, repairing the defect, and putting them back together. It's a big challenge. These defects are the number one cause of death for infants with a birth defect. And so many don't survive. One of the issues here, and I got exposed to this in a big way at Edwards, is it's not well understood. Just because it's a little bit below the radar screen, it wasn't something that people would necessarily invest in or innovate in, just because it was seen as so heterogeneous, and there weren't enough of these folks to make a difference. Now, when you hear the number 1 in 100 births, that's pretty big, and it probably deserves more attention, but for whatever reason, it really hasn't attracted that investment. And my point of view, and I think many agree with this, we are capable, the royal we of the community is capable of doing much better job of innovation for these birth defects and to create tools for doctors to be able to address it. But we haven't done it because it hasn't been a great business proposition. So these docs have been extraordinarily resourceful, and they go grab devices from other parts of the hospital. We call them MacGyvers to some extent, and they make it work for these, little tiny infants. And you have to remember, the heart of a normal child at birth might be the size of a walnut, right? So not very big stuff. So you can imagine how intricate that surgery is. There's also other specialties like interventional cardiologists who actually use catheters to address some of these defects. But again, they don't have many tools that were built for them. And so as a result, there's a whole group of technologies that I'll call them are off-label for these devices. And so no one's done the hard work to really validate that they work well for these kids or that they get paid for. Another problem that goes along with this, the detection of the problem is pretty uneven as well. If you're fortunate to be in an excellent system with terrific sonographers, it can be found in the womb, where an ultrasound can identify that there's a heart defect and that mom could be at the right place, so that the baby is born someplace for them to provide the immediate proper care for them. But in many cases, the moms aren't aware of it when the baby is born, which leads to a whole bunch of other issues. And sometimes actually that diagnosis gets delayed forever. You hear about teenagers when they're out and participating in some sport that goes down and never knew that they had a heart defect. So detection is very uneven. And also just the expertise to treat these kids is very uneven. We've been on a learning journey on this one, on many aspects of this. And if you see a lot of a certain kind of heart defect, you become pretty good at treating them. And so the biggest centers that have well-developed programs, they can develop some pretty impressive competence. And the survival today of many infants is so much better than it was 10 or 20 years ago. But it is highly uneven. If you go to a center where they just don't see that defect very often, maybe they see it once a year or less, the difference between the performance of somebody that's come down the learning curve and seen a lot of it and hasn't seen it is dramatic. It's not just like a 10% difference in outcomes. It could be a 10 times difference in outcomes. So it's a challenge out there, and hopefully you're getting a sense for the landscape. When we talk to the patients and the families, it's a really tough journey. One of the things that they say to us is, often the docs don't have answers for them. They want to know, can you fix it? How's my kid going to be? Is my kid going to have a normal life? And there aren't straightforward answers to that. One of the problems are when you do this repair on a child or an infant, often the child will outgrow the repair and need a second surgery or a third or a fourth. And there's many stories where there being more than 5 and 10 surgeries. So the durability of these repairs, like one and done, is not likely in this field. And that's a real opportunity for improvement. Also, often these heart defects aren't the only thing wrong with the child. They might have other things wrong with them, so it makes it even more complex. And the financial burden that goes along, in addition to the emotional burden of how's my child going to be, the financial burden is substantial. In many cases, way more than a family can handle. So there's a big need to be able to focus on what can we do to help those patients thrive. And the thing that's kind of interesting is somehow this has all stayed kind of below the radar screen. Our numbers say that heart defects are 60 times more prevalent than all childhood cancers combined. Yet in our daily life, we get exposed to childhood cancers all the time, and great charities that work to be able to support this area. But in CHD, it only attracts a small fraction of that kind of investment, just because the understanding and is quite low. So we've got lots to do in this regard. And I got exposed to this during my years at Edwards. We'd get a call from a family or a physician who are just desperate to get help and said, my kid's not going to make it, or I have to do a surgery on Monday, and I was wondering, can I take your valve? I'm thinking of using it upside down and sewing it in an unusual way, and all these incredible stories. And you think, oh my gosh, how do I even answer that question? Because we have no idea. We've never done that kind of testing before, but it happens all the time in this field. And it didn't make business sense, because they didn't fall into neat categories, and there weren't enough numbers to have the math work very well for it to be an area for investment. And we always said to ourselves, boy, maybe in retirement we could take this on. And Lynn and I talked about this a lot. And this dates back a couple of decades, and try and do something about it. And it left a mark on us in our thinking to be constantly exposed to these dire situations. And there were some wonderful positive stories that came out of this, and some not so positive. So it really left a mark. So we retired a couple of years ago, and since that time, they've really turned our attention 100% to philanthropy. And you might go to the next slide, Orin. And we really have decided that the Mussallem CHD Alliance would be the centerpiece of our philanthropy. And that's where most of our energy would go, most of our resources would go. And we really have developed a commitment to help those born with a congenital heart defect survive and thrive, and from their first heartbeat onward. And this, yes, in many cases, it's going to be infants and children, but the support needs to last for a lifetime, because the other thing we've learned is there's many, many that have survived the early part of their life and now are adults, but don't get the care that they need within the existing system. The adult cardiologists and surgeons are very busy with all the things that we all know are most common, like coronary artery disease, or those kind of things that go along with high blood pressure or diabetes or some kind of infection, and really don't focus on this little corner of the world. And so there's so much to do there. And so we really aspire to be a uniter and an empowerer of this community of stakeholders. There have been some dedicated people that have done it in the past, but many of these efforts are really fragmented. And so what we're dedicated to is to really transform long-term care. Can we bring investment here? Can we bring innovation here that really changes the way the treatment happens? And we believe that's possible. It's not going to be easy, but it's going to be possible, and it's been remarkable. We've gone out and said, we're not going to respect the barriers. We're going to shatter the barriers. We're going to try and ignite innovation. We're going to try and be the drivers of change. And this is not for some personal reasons. What we're really trying to build here is a movement to get the whole community energized around it. And it's been remarkable. We've been at this for a couple of years and talking to the people that we know that are dedicated in the congenital heart defect community, and they have been so generous with their willingness to help us. This has gone across physicians. So many physicians say, yeah, let's go do this. Let's go make a difference. I'm glad we're going after it. We see it in policymakers. Our own FDA has been very generous, and they really care about addressing this condition for the citizens of the United States of America and want to be our partner. And they say, tell us how we can help. And we found that same willingness across the board of everybody in this community. And healthcare, as you may or may not know, it's very much it's a team sport. And there's many people that live in one corner of the healthcare world, but to bring that all together in a movement that is coordinated and organized and driven and funded is one of the things that Linda and I are committed to do.
Yeah.
Next slide.
Mike, if I could jump in for a second,
Sure.
and I'll introduce myself later, but just briefly, Orin Herskowitz, president of the Mussallem CHD Alliance. Those of you who've known Mike for a long time, and I think many of you do, know how important these words are to him. And so Linda and Mike and I and the team spent a long time really thinking about what is MCA here for. And there's two parts I wanted to call attention to. Um, this is about surviving. It's about increasing the clinical treatment rates. It's about making sure diagnosis happens earlier. It's about making sure that kind of quality care is available to all. But it's also very much about the thriving part. That was chosen very intentionally because in our conversations with patients and patient families, it's not only a long clinical journey, it's a journey that impacts almost every part of a family's life. It's the economics. It's about the way the parents, the kind of jobs the parents can hold down. It's about where the families can choose to live and what kind of support networks they have. It's about navigating a really complex insurance journey. It's about the often unfortunate stigma attached to parts of the disease, to the defects. It can lead to missing a ton of schools, so there's educational attainments, um, missing, not being able to achieve your career goals, a social isolation, and we see that all of that as part of what we'd like to be helpful on to really help these patients not only survive but also thrive. And the other part that I think Mike's touched on is this idea of the alliance. Um, there's a reason why it's such a core part of the name of what we're trying to get done. This is not something that, Linda and Mike invented. There are so many people in this community of dedicated caregivers and clinicians and policymakers and entrepreneurs and venture capitalists and strategics that are trying to do the right thing. And we're here to support all of them and to try and make this community as strong as possible. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Sean.
well said, Orin. Thank you.
Okay, great.
So, at a highest level, here's our strategy. And again, we've tried to take a really holistic view of this. We say, first and foremost, we'd like to improve patients' access to quality care. Like, can we get each patient the care that they deserve? And today, this is very difficult in the United States and even more difficult outside the United States. And so there's a big opportunity for improvement there. What does quality care look like, and how can we make it available at the right place at the right time? Second, what can we do to improve patients' quality of life? Orin just spoke to this. This really enhancing their lives so that they really have a great life and that, you can be born with a heart defect and still have a fabulous life. What can we do? And often when we get in the clinical world, we don't think about what we can do for the lives of patients. And we try and really consider that. And it's an important part of what we think we're about. And finally, we'd love to just bring a lot of innovation to this space. Are there innovations that are in the works? Yes. Should there be 2 times, 10 times more? Yes. There needs to be so much more innovation in this space. And I don't think we can get there just by funding the innovation with philanthropy. I think that we need to be able to do the things that are necessary to demonstrate that this is an area that's worth investing in. And this is one that an investor could get a return on and do something really positive for the world and get a return. And if there's one thing that we know that the processes to make these things happen, they're kind of cumbersome and they don't work very well. So streamlining the path to success by increasing awareness and knowledge, reducing some of these barriers so that we really can accelerate the innovation and elevate the quality of care for all is part of the strategy. Now, we might say, okay, so how are you going to measure success? We say 3 things at the highest level. One is we're going to keep trying to measure Are we really improving patients' access to quality care? Can we move the needle on that? And we're not going to be satisfied unless that happens. Are we really boosting patients' quality of life? What are we doing? We can measure that, and we're committed to keep that as one of our key measuring sticks. And the other is, let's just measure how much innovation we bring to this. How many really transformational different ways of approaching these things can we bring based on what's available today? And as I said earlier, the smarts is out there, the people are out there, the technologies that are out there to really do much more than we're doing today, but they're just, no one's making the investment to make it happen. And we're committed to change that. So our measurements are pretty straightforward, and we're kind of anxious to start on this journey. Now, I might add at this point that we've gotten more serious about it. We've been on this learning journey trying to say, what's the smart way to tackle this? And we've started to build a strategy and build a team. We're very proud to have hired Orin Herskowitz, who is our president of this effort, and really going to help lead us. And we've been working hand in hand to take this from a vision to a reality. And that's going to be what really happens. Just having this be anything short of a real success and really measurable results would be a disappointment for us. And Orin and I have really had a chance to work a lot together, Linda as well. And we think we have the beginning of a small but mighty team to go after this. So Orin, why don't I turn it over to you for a few minutes to build a little bit around this?
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, everybody. Or nice to meet everyone. And I will remind people, we've gotten some questions. I'm trying to answer them as they come in, but feel free to put questions into the Q&A, and we'll work them into the conversation if we can. But Orin Herskowitz, just by way of background, I joined the Mussallem CHD Alliance, I think, as employee number 1 in May of 2025. So we're coming up on about 7 months now. I spent the last 19 years at Columbia University, where I was involved in a lot of science-based innovation and commercialization, trying to get those innovations out of the lab and into patients as quickly as possible. And before that, I was at the Boston Consulting Group for 7 years. So this has been just an amazing opportunity, and I'm thrilled to walk the road along with Linda and Mike and all of their advisors and friends who've been so helpful. One of the things that Mike mentioned that I think is worth highlighting is this really has been a learning journey. The ambition is there, the will is there, and Linda and Mike are fully committed to this as the flagstone of what they're trying to accomplish with their philanthropy. But exactly how to do it is something that we've been trying to figure out together, because this is new for us. And so there's a whole community of people who've been tremendously helpful in sharing their wisdom, their expertise, their perspectives, their hot takes. We've gotten a lot of hot takes, and not everyone always agrees with each other, and that's been fantastic. So we're learning as we go. One of the ways we got started, though, which is in some ways a little bit of an advantage that we had, is before I joined, Mike and Linda had partnered with the amazing team at Stanford Biodesign to do a comprehensive needs analysis of everything standing between today and every CHD patient getting the care, the lifetime care they deserve. So this was a project, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Stanford Biodesign, but the center there has a very rigorous process for discovering what they call need statements, which are essentially identifying all of the clinical and other needs that CHD patients deserve. It also is an effort to understand which of these needs are possibly unmet today, but are already in the process of being addressed by existing foundations, clinicians, advocacy groups, and others. So this was, I think, nearly a year of work. Is that right, Mike?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Stanford team, led by Ignacio Perez, who was absolutely fantastic under the guidance of Janine and Josh at Stanford, led to a really comprehensive bottoms-up understanding of the problems that remain unaddressed in CHD, which is a tremendous advantage when you're trying to do something like what Linda and Mike have in mind for this foundation. On the other hand, the challenge with it, oh, actually, before I should move on, there was a lot of information. Doing bottoms-up analysis tends to mean you get everything, which is amazing, but it also can be a little disorienting. There were over 200 and about 230 individual needs that were identified. So, in an effort to try and make sure that this learning journey continues, we are in the process working with the team there and the Mussallem CHD Alliance team of turning those learnings into an interactive, fully open sourced explorer that we will be publishing sometime. We're hoping for spring 2026. But essentially, it's a website. It's a web-based, openly accessible navigation tool to explore all 230 of those needs, as well as all the initiatives that are in place around them, not just for people's understanding, but we're really hoping that this tool can help inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs and industry executives and clinicians and innovators to try and make a change for the CHD patients worldwide. The other thing is we were very much looking for the community to continue to add comments to these. So we're looking for your ideas, and there will be ways once this is launched that people can leave comments and suggestions for us on how we might try to make a difference on these various needs. From our perspective, though, it's great to have all of these needs identified, but it's very hard to take action on 230 individual items. So the work of the foundation over the last 6 or 7 months has been to try and understand and prioritize where we can make a difference in a unique way, how to take advantage in the best way possible of Linda and Mike's generosity and energy and the community they bring to this. And so over the last 3 or 4 months in particular, we've been engaged on these here. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but items 2 through 4, which is taking that superset of needs and identifying possible initiatives that could make a difference on like a category of them, a bundle of them that make sense together. So we've been identifying those opportunities. We've been then getting feedback from an amazing group of expert clinicians and researchers and patient advocacy groups, policymakers, entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, industry folks, to help us figure out which of them could have the biggest impact and are something that are uniquely opportunities that a foundation could take advantage of and really try and drive change on. So that's where we've been spending our time. It's been really amazing and humbling to see how many people have volunteered their time to work with us on this, and we're looking to engage even more people in the months ahead. So where are we now? We have actually we just wrapped up this weekend our first strategy retreat. So we brought around 25 of our most senior advisors and experts together for the weekend near Mike and Linda's home here to help us figure out where we could have the biggest impact. I'm sorry, that was not meant to be a reveal slide. We'll be refining these over the next 3 months. So there's lots more to come in 26. But what you'll see here is that some of these are emerging ideas that where the group feels like we could have a major impact. Just by way of example, ensuring the ongoing availability of critical off-label medical devices. So Mike touched on this early on, but one of the things we've heard loud and clear from clinicians, in particular interventional cardiologists, is that some of the, as Mike said, MacGyver tools that they use to treat these most vulnerable patients, the smallest babies, are being used off-label because nothing else exists. And obviously, the larger goal is to make sure that there are devices that are actually fit for purpose, that are on label to treat these kids. But in the meantime, the best that we have as a society are these devices that are being used off-label and being jerry-rigged, and they work. They're used by—
Yeah, you know what? Can we do just to pile on a little bit, Orin, just to give people an example of the off-label devices? So, for example, the cardiologist will take a stent that's intended to open one of the blood vessels that goes to the liver, and it happens to work pretty well in kids' hearts. Or they'll take a balloon that was intended to be used to remove clots from a vein, and use it to open up a passageway in the heart. So that's what we're talking about when we're saying off-label. They weren't designed for it, but the docs are just resourceful and they find whatever they can find to make it happen. And we think that we can move that to a much better place.
Right. And in particular, the problem in the meantime is some of those devices, because they weren't designed to be used in CHD, the manufacturers of those devices might remove them from the market for reasons that have nothing to do with CHD. There's other reasons why they might get removed, which may not have implications for the market they were designed for, but in the meantime takes away an absolutely critical tool that clinicians have to save the lives of their patients. And so we're working with a group of those clinicians and with the FDA, which has been amazingly supportive, just amazing, to try and many of the strategics themselves to try to figure out a way to ensure that those devices remain available for CHD until a fit for purpose solution can be brought to market. So that's just an example of one. Another area that has been flagged for us as being critically important is earlier, more accurate, and more accessible diagnostics. As Mike mentioned earlier, many CHD patients aren't identified in utero, and therefore the mother ends up giving birth in a place where in a center of care, which might be a perfectly great clinical environment, but isn't able to treat the baby because of their complex CHD. And so what ends up happening is there's, all of a sudden it's a frantic emergency and there's medevac flights and people are trying to get the kid to a care center that can take care of them. Whereas if they knew earlier, the birth could have happened in a place that was able to take care of them. And this actually happens. I've heard so many stories from patients since I've started this job that they were diagnosed when they were 10, when they were 15, when they were 20, when they were 40. And if they'd known about this earlier, they could have lived a better life. And so we're really trying to make a difference in those earlier, more accurate, more accessible diagnostics.
Yeah, and you know what's so interesting about it? It's the tools that are available today. The simple ultrasound device that might be used on most moms to check and see how their pregnancy is going can actually see these heart defects in many cases. But maybe somebody doesn't have the expertise or the time or whatever to make that happen. But we think we can apply technology, maybe a great use of artificial intelligence to actually help improve the quality of these diagnostics and the pervasiveness so that the baby's born in the right place, so that this condition gets discovered before there's a real clinical challenge.
Right. And actually, I'll note along those lines, one of the first, we haven't been standing still. So we've been trying to do a lot of learning and a lot of strategizing about where the big focus of the foundation will be. At the same time, there have been opportunities that have come along that we thought were too good to pass up and were within the mission as we were seeing it. So we've started to I think we've made 30 gifts, grants, and investments already so far. And there'll be announcements coming out about that fairly regularly going forward. But one of the first ones we did that we're incredibly proud to be part of is there's a startup out of France called Brightheart that is using AI and also very simple sort of build-ins to the workflow within hospitals anywhere there's an ultrasound to help get those diagnoses made earlier, faster, and more reliably. And so we made a small investment in their Series A round to support their efforts because we just really believe in what they're trying to get done. And by the way, because I'm sure this will raise questions of, well, how do I get an idea to you? We'll talk about that more in a little bit. At some point soon, we will have an open call for those kind of ideas that we might be able to support. Right now, we're a very small team. And so I'll give our email on the next slide so you can sign up and send us stuff. But just to go through this list a little bit more, we are confident that there are ways to get improved access to quality, critical, and lifelong care. We're still working on exactly how that would get done. But as Mike mentioned earlier, the quality of care people get at the true centers of excellence is vastly different than the care they might get at their local hospital, as great as that hospital is. And we're looking for ways to enable more centers of care to be able to handle these in an appropriate way and to scale the kinds of quality care that you get at the centers of excellence as broadly as possible. We're also looking to increase the rate of innovation in clinical solutions. So we mentioned earlier that a lot of these devices are being used off-label, but we would love to bring more on-label devices that are actually made for this, but not only just devices, but any kind of interventions that can be brought to the table. And I saw a question from Meredith Mallory in the chat, but questions around transplants. And we are absolutely looking at partial heart valve transplants and full heart transplants and the full suite of innovations to try and figure out where we can make a difference. So everything is kind of on the radar for now, but we haven't exactly gotten to the prioritization yet. We know that awareness and advocacy are really important. And so we have just hired Perry Bridger as our EVP of Public Affairs. And so he can be starting to work on that space. And lastly, it's the initiative that we've moved along furthest so far. Over and over again, across all of these other initiatives, what we've heard loud and clear is that there needs to be better access to CHD patient data, obviously respecting patient privacy and everything else, but that for researchers to discover the next wave of innovations, for clinicians to better understand, to make their clinical decisions about how to intervene, for patients and their families to be able to understand the defect that they've been born with, and also how their care journey should unfold. For innovators and entrepreneurs to understand where the opportunities might lie, there needs to be better collection, synthesis, and availability of the data to support these kind of the clinical outcomes. So we've already started that one. We have a great task force together of experts from the clinical data field. And we think that's going to be a really flagship initiative for the foundation over the next few years. So lots more to come. We will continue to work on this. We're continuing to learn. We welcome everyone's feedback and comments. And if you have, I see great questions in the chat, largely of the variety of how can I get involved? So that's fantastic. We really are trying to make the Alliance part of this name come true. We are a very small team. And so for now, the best way for people to get involved is to, if you'd like, you can email us at info@mussallemfoundation.org. You can also sign up on our website to receive updates at well, you can see it right there on the screen. We will be building our team and creating more of an infrastructure to engage even more folks as we move forward. So stay with us, stay tuned. We're only 6 months in, but we're really looking forward to your active engagement going forward and can't wait to work with you all. Mike, any closing thoughts?
No. So, for example, I see a question up here from Dr. Tom Morrissey, which is an interesting one. He says kids with CHD and their family understandably also have mental health issues to help deal with their physical disease, and it's difficult to find therapists with any background for this patient population. You could argue that this would impact one of your pillars of improving patient access to quality care, and absolutely right. So have you considered including a leader in this field? It's a great point. We're still, again, on this journey of creating this and learning. The more that we get exposed to that, and thanks, Tom, for highlighting that issue, the more that we can really focus on, okay, where does that deserve to be on the priority list? How soon do we get at that, and so forth. So thanks, Tom, and for everybody that has ideas, fire away and know that we're going to take them seriously, but we're also trying to be good prioritizers of where do we put our time and energy, first, second, third.
Yeah. And I'll just note, this webinar was being recorded. We're going to make the link available, so we'll send that out to all the participants. We'll also post on our social media channels. I'd be remiss if I didn't say, please follow us. I think LinkedIn is our most active one for now. So follow the Mussallem CHD Alliance on LinkedIn. And also the Linda and Mike Mussallem Foundation. We'll send out the link when it's ready. We'll also send out the slides that we use today. And we really are trying to be as open and transparent as possible. So get in touch with us. We'd love your help and look forward to the journey ahead to help patients survive and thrive.
Yeah, thank you all. This is a bold journey, and we're going to give it all of our energy. And we really welcome having you along for this. Again, it's an alliance, and together we can make it happen.
Great. I do actually see another question. I'm sorry, Mike. The questions are now coming in fast and furious, and actually one of them is, I think, and they're all worth addressing. Many of them are just offers of help, and that's great, and we look forward to following up with you. There's a question from Naomi Chesler about if we could, and I thank you, by the way, Naomi, for using the word guesstimate. Because I think that's spot on. But can you guesstimate the balance of your interest in fundamental research that could affect care 5, 10, 15 years from now versus applied research and entrepreneurship that can have an impact on a shorter time scale? So, Mike, I'll let you take that one.
The answer is both, Naomi. We very much are willing to do the hard work that says some of these things are going to take 5 or 10 years, but somebody needs to get that started and going. Having said that, we don't mind, and I've used this expression before, we don't mind planting the seeds and tending the vines, but we'd like to taste the wine as well. We really would love to be able to have some patient impact before too long. And if everything was long term and we weren't impacting patients, we would be disappointed by that. So it's going to be a both and we're going to try and thread the needle on that, Naomi, but don't hold back from either one of those avenues.
Right. And I've heard Linda and Mike talk a lot of if I was going to do a word cloud of our conversations over the last 7 months, I don't think there's been a single conversation where the words transformative and innovative haven't been used. That is really a common theme of like, how do we change the game in a way that is sustainable, that will last for generations, that will have truly global impact. But at the same time, there's so much good work that is already going on from the amazing trusted partners, the people we've known for years and the people we're meeting that we want to support in the meantime. So it's a mix, and we'll continue to guesstimate as we go along. And with that, thank you all. Stay tuned. More to come.
Thanks all.